I want to ask a simple question. What are the Bears doing? What are the Chicago Bears doing to help their young second-year quarterback, Justin Fields? I look at Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, and they hired an offensive head coach, Doug Peterson, who played quarterback in the NFL, who's won a Super Bowl. He knows how to work with quarterbacks. They also brought in receiver Christian Kirk from Arizona. They traded for Zay Jones from the Raiders. He's a good receiver. Whether you agree that it's going to work or not, the one thing we can all agree on is that clearly Jacksonville is trying to support their young quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. The New York Jets, they drafted receiver Garrett Wilson. They brought in tight end CJ Uzomah. They're building their offensive line. They're building their defense. They're supporting their young quarterback, Zach Wilson. And then Miami has, to support their young quarterback Tua, they got a new offensive head coach, Mike McDaniel. They get traded for a new star receiver, Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill is a great offensive dynamic duo. I can't wait to see. They're going to run the ball well because that's what Mike McDaniel does well as a coach. And you look at Miami. Miami's clearly trying to support their young quarterback, trying to help him, put him in a position to do well and succeed. So I ask you one more time, what are the Chicago Bears doing to support their young quarterback, Justin Fields? Because these are the three biggest things the Chicago Bears did this offseason. They traded away Khalil Mack, their star defensive player, which he was expensive, whatever, but automatically overnight now your defense got worse. Whether you like the trade or not, the defense isn't better after trading away Khalil Mack. They also, another noteworthy move that happened with the Bears offseason is they lost stud receiver Allen Robinson. So your receiving core is worse, your defense is worse, and they hired a defensive head coach, Matt Eberflus, who seems like a good leader. He was the Colts defensive coordinator. People like him. But I'm not sure yet how hiring Matt Eberflus directly helps and benefits their young quarterback, Justin Fields. You look at Mike McDaniel, you go, yeah, I get why Miami hired him to help their young quarterback. Doug Peterson, I get why the Jaguars hired him to help Trevor Lawrence. And the Jets, they got Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother, worked with Kyle Shanahan as their offensive coordinator. They drafted a stud receiver. They're building the offensive line. They're getting their defense better. Every other team, I can point to how they made moves to help their young quarterback, except Chicago. I don't know what's going on here. I'm rooting for Justin Fields. I want him to do well. Also, in fairness to Chicago, they had limited cap space. I'm sure that didn't help them in their pursuit to make moves and help their young quarterback. And I like Darnell Mooney, their number one receiver, but while he is awesome, I wish they had more. A lot of NFL teams drafted receivers. A lot of teams made moves to go get a receiver. The Bears did not. All they did was lose their number one receiver. And in fairness to Chicago, I'm trying to be as objective as I can. They did hire Luke Getsy, who's I think an intriguing offensive coordinator who worked before as the Packers quarterback coach in Green Bay. He was the passing game coordinator with Aaron Rodgers. He's known for RPOs, which I think is a great fit with Justin Fields. I'm not trying to say that it's all bad in Chicago, but here is what I am saying. It does still seem like Justin Fields is the least supported young quarterback in the NFL. There's no top receiver. There's a weaker offensive line. They don't have a top-notch defense. They hired a defensive head coach. I am worried that Justin Fields could struggle, and it may not even be his fault. It might be the lack of support around him. So I guess the most definitive thing I can say here is that if Justin Fields isn't a home run success this year, if Trevor Lawrence pops off and is awesome, and Zach Wilson looks really good, and Mac Jones is great, and Kenny Pickett starts for Pittsburgh and does really well, I am begging you now, remember this conversation we just had, and remember that I told you the Bears didn't do a good enough job supporting Justin Fields this offseason, especially not compared to every other team around the NFL. And if Justin Fields isn't incredible this year, don't bail on the guy. Give it another year so they can really build some pieces around him and support him the way they probably should have this offseason. They did the best they could. It was a tough cap situation. They got rid of Khalil Mack, who was expensive. But certainly, I wish the Bears had done more to support their young quarterback. And you got to remember that going into this year. As we see, I hope they do well. Maybe they'll do the best they can with what they got. But certainly, they could have done more to support their young quarterback, especially compared to everyone else. And remember that as you watch the Bears this year.